Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, May 13th, 2025 Board of Education regular board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 4:36. Do we have any public comment on closed session items? There's no public comment. We'll retire to closed session and return at 6 p.m. for open session. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, May 13th, 2025 Board of Education regular board meeting. We'll call the open session meeting to order at 6:22. And we have language access. Welcome.
Thank you. We have Spanish interpretation available here in the boardroom and also through Zoom, and we also have ASL interpretation through Zoom. Buenas tardes, tenemos interpretación al español disponible por si alguien gusta escuchar la presentación en español. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Maldonado, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand up and face the flag. Ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one announcement from closed session. In closed session, the board approved by a unanimous 5-0 vote the appointment of Allison Quijano to serve as the next principal at Adams Elementary. Congratulations. Next, we have our student board member report.
Good evening, everyone. Dos Pueblos High School has announced their talent show, and the stage is set to be shown on June 4th. I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge the recent passing of Mr. Pedro Menchaca, a beloved member in our community. He held a special place in the hearts of not just students but many others in our community, serving our school for nearly 30 years of service with Santa Barbara High School. The loss is felt deeply by the community. On behalf of the student body, I want to extend our heartfelt condolences to his family, friends, and colleagues. We are grateful for his years of service and the positive influence he had on our school. Mr. Menchaca will be deeply missed, but his dedication and care for his community will never be forgotten. I want to give a quick moment of silence for him. Thank you. I want to express the concern of many students. Recently, there have been 2 incidents involving staff members and students in the high school level. It's crucial that our school climate remains a safe environment for all. I urge the board to continue strengthening background checks, support systems, and the reporting processes to ensure situations like these are addressed properly. No student should ever feel unsafe, and we must continue to advocate for a culture of safety and trust in our school. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Dr. Maldonado, do you have a superintendent's report?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to ask Sandra to bring up our report. And I do want to acknowledge that you started with Mr. Menchaca. I actually had the same presentation. So thank you so much, Eric, for that thoughtful recognition of Mr. Menchaca. We know that he worked for Santa Barbara Unified since 2009. He was a proud graduate of Santa Barbara High School, a true Don in spirit and action. I know that he modeled integrity, patience, and compassion for all the students, and he will be missed. He does leave behind his wife, Rebecca, his sons, Luke and Philip, and his daughter, Ariana. Next, I do have with us today Mr. Ed Gomez, our newest principal for Santa Barbara High School. He was selected by the board at the last meeting, and we've asked him to be here to say a few words and introduce himself to the board and to our community. Welcome, Mr. Gomez.
Yep. All right, it's one of these fancy ones. All right. Good evening, board members, Dr. Maldonado, and cabinet. I too would like to express my condolences to the Menchaca family. I've only been at Santa Barbara High for 2 years, but in those 2 years, Pedro made a very lasting impression on me. I'm going to miss those morning texts that say, Becky made chorizo burritos today. come on by and grab one. So my condolences to the entire Menchaca family and the Santa Barbara High community. First and foremost, I would like to thank you for entrusting me with the principalship of Santa Barbara High School. I'm humbled and honored to be the next principal of such a historic, iconic institution. I know firsthand the power of public education. I was born and raised in Santa Paula, just down the road about 42 miles, 45 minutes on a good day. Neither of my parents, I was second generation Santa Paula, neither of my parents had the opportunity to attend Santa Paula High School, but they made sure that each of their 6 children graduated from Santa Paula High School. And their favorite, me, graduated in 1986 and went on to attend Cal State Northridge, where I earned my my degree in history and a social science teaching credential. In 1992, and for those of you who were around, it was a good year. 1992, I began my teaching career in Burbank Unified, and I also married my high school sweetheart, Deanna, who's also a Santa Paula High School graduate. There's a theme here. We went on, I taught for 7 years in Burbank, and then in 1998, we returned back home to raise our family, and I began teaching and coaching at my alma mater, where I stayed for 20 years, teaching and coaching, and we raised our family, and our 3 children attended Santa Paula High School, each of them going on to attend, one attending the University of Southern California, and 2 of them attending UC Berkeley. So my point is, I kind of get this whole multi-generational, deep-rooted high school tradition thing. It's not the same. Our high school is only about 110 years old, 120 years old. Santa Barbara High is 150. So I respect we are not at that level in Santa Paula, but I get the idea. In 1999, I left the classroom and came to Santa Barbara and was hired as a dean of students at La Colina. It was a great year to start an administrative career as a global pandemic broke out. And then I was transitioned over to La Cumbre for 3 years. And the last 2 years, I've remained at Santa Barbara High School. I also left out SBCA. Sorry, a brief stint there. And I'm so grateful to all of the amazing administrators and counselors and teachers who have had the privilege to work with and learn with and classified staff over the last 6 years. I feel very blessed to be in a profession where I'm ending my 32nd year and starting my 33rd year, and I'm more excited than I've ever been. I don't think there's too many people, too many professions where you can say that. So as far as my goals for SBHS, my goal is to be a steward of Santa Barbara High School. And stewardship is about a deeper, ongoing responsibility to ensure that what is entrusted to you is not only maintained, but cultivated to reach its fullest potential. And so that's my goal for Santa Barbara High School, is to not just maintain it. Fred Roslo has done an amazing job to come in and get things, lay a nice foundation for me to continue to build upon. And I look forward to doing that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to lead with my heart. We're going to ask our teachers to teach with their heart. We're going to ask our students to put their hearts into what they do. And when I say heart is obviously the actual, word heart, but there's also an acronym that I stole from a favorite coach of mine. But heart stands for, the H is for humility, being humble enough to know we don't know it all, we will make mistakes, and to ask for help. For you all and everybody. The E is for enthusiasm and energy. Like I said, I'm very enthusiastic, and you have to bring that with you every day. Our staff will bring it. They do it already, and we're going to continue to build on that. The A is for accountability of staff, accountability of students, accountability of self. And the R is for relationships, because to create that environment of safety that Eric referenced. It starts with relationships, and it starts with the leaders and the teachers and the adults on campus, forming those relationships with students, all adults. And then the T is for tenacity and toughness, because the journey is never easy. There's many times we want to give up, but we must persevere and continue on. So if our leaders lead with their heart, and our teachers teach with their heart, and our students pour their hearts into it, I think I'll be able to cultivate an environment, continue to cultivate an environment where Santa Barbara High School grows to its fullest potential. So thank you very much once again, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomez. Board members, next I'd like to introduce to you a new webpage that is being developed by our Arts TOSA, Mr. Vance and Ms. Pilhofer. I know there's been a lot of questions about the Santa Barbara Unified's investments in the arts. So we've created a new webpage. It'll be under the About section. You'll notice here, I think it's live now, Sandra, that you'll be able to see the investments under the block grant funds, the one-time monies, as well as what's invested in the Prop 28 money and what they are each supposed to go towards. If you keep going down, you'll note, keep going up. Every school's allocation is listed there so that you can see what has been given based on that enrollment that they had at the October 2023. This is a typical, what we do in education is we use enrollment from October, which is called Norm Day. And it shows what each of the schools got. If you go to the next tab, you'll notice that we also listed here for everyone to see the Prop 28, all the forms, all the accountability reports that we'll be sending to the state. You can click on those gray boxes. Don't do it now, please. But you can find information there. The next tab is the Strategic Arts Plan. We know that there was a group of people that worked together that if you click on the link, you'll find the 5-year Strategic Arts Plan. I'm looking for Denise, 5 years Strategic Arts Plan. And it lists all the people involved by school side along with all the goals and all the goals that they want to meet with the metrics that they want to use. And all those things are being looked at now and will be continuing to look at. And then the last tab is frequently asked questions. We know there's been a lot of questions about why can't we use money for, buying, I'll make it up, blue doors. That's not a real ask, but there's a lot of asks, a lot of confusion around what we can and cannot buy. So if you scroll down, you'll find your most frequently asked questions. I do encourage anyone who doesn't find an answer to, or a question and an answer that they would like to ask, to please write to me at askthesuperintendent@sbunified.org. Send us your questions, and we will keep this as a live page. So as new questions come in, we'll go ahead and update that as well. We thought that it was really getting confusing, especially as I'm communicating to the board the different questions you're sending me. It'd be better for it to be transparent and all in one place. I have had a request to have the expenditures completed by school. So as soon as the books close, we can do that as well and add it to this webpage. So I wanted to just let the board know that. Please know it's a live page with information that will change. Next. Over the weekend, we got I'll wait for Sandra. Sorry, Sandra. Over the weekend, we got the news that one of our students, Caitlin, was named the 2025 National Champion Courtroom Artist for mock trial competition in Phoenix, Arizona. We are really incredibly proud of her achievement, and she was honored to represent Dos Pueblos High School on the national stage, no less. So please join me in congratulating Caitlin. We also know Mr. Gleason is retiring, but we want to thank him for all of his positive encouragement and support. Her teacher of over the last couple of years, she has truly enjoyed having her as her first official art teacher. So thank you, Mr. Gleason. Next, last week, we had Santa Barbara Unified AVID program celebrated over 180 graduating seniors for this past month. We're coming up in June, Families filled the Joanne Case Theater at La Cumbre, and there was much laughter and cheers and tears shared by all in attendance. Over 50 of our seniors, go ahead to the next slide, committed to a 4-year university. They're all listed here. Some committed to 2 years schools, art schools, career pathways. And we want to congratulate this avid cohort, and we also want to congratulate the thousands of other seniors, maybe not thousands, hundreds of other seniors who will be graduating this June. And we're really thankful to other teachers, their counselors, their parents, and administrators who make these incredible things happen for our kids as they go on to life and beyond. Next, I want to end today's board report with Classroom Champion. As you know, we've been really working on featuring many of our teachers. Mr. Amado Racine. I'm reading really fast. Mr. Amado Racine, he is the Therapeutic Learning Program teacher at San Marcos High School. He teaches in the GROW program, supporting students with disabilities. GROW is a therapeutic learning program that we offer at each high school, as well as one program at the junior high school level. Here's Mr. Racine.
I was inspired to become a teacher actually right after I graduated from college at UCSB. I was living here in Santa Barbara and saw a job opening here at San Marcos for a paraeducator. And I was a paraeducator for a few years, and that was kind of like my stepping stone to being a teacher.
Hey, how you doing, kid?
I'm finishing something for English.
You keeping those A's in your classes?
Mm-hmm.
Straight A's, that's how we do.
Academic weapon.
That's how we do.
It's really important for students to feel that they are in a place that they are welcome and where they are safe and where they are valued. So if I can make that, connection with each of my students, I feel like I'm doing my job, and that's what keeps them coming back and keeps them pursuing their education. What we do in the GROW program is we really do social emotional learning. So what I've done a lot is bring in things that students are able to kind of use to learn calming techniques. We have blanket making, we have music, we have gardening, we have a lot of different things that's driven by the student interest. We try to bring in to help them kind of lower their affective filter and feel like school is a safe place, an interesting place, a place they want to come to and attend. My job would be impossible without the support that so many different people behind the scenes, a lot of positions that people don't even know exist. We have occupational therapists, we have RAP teams that work with families and with students outside of school, and counselors, and I have a team of wonderful paraeducators who are so great at giving each student kind of a little bit of themselves. The graduates, when they graduate from our class, no one has ever said, I don't want to be up there. We put their pictures. So we have, the class of 2024, 23, 22, 21, and these are the students who graduated through our program, and students aspire to be up there. You can't have one approach with every student. We do a lot of gardening and plant stuff here because every plant and every tree has a different need, a different amount of light, it's a different amount of water, a different amount of care. Some just need to be left alone. Some need daily, care. And it's kind of a metaphor for teaching and for working with students. Everybody has a different need, and if given the proper attention, they can grow and become successes, and that's what we strive for.
Thank you so much. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Maldonado. Now we will go to public comments for non-agenda matters. Mr. Banning.
Yes, we have Stephen Hughes, followed by Rich Lashua, and then Paulina Romero.
Is this on? Oh, there's hello. Good evening. First of all, I wanted to say something. I didn't know that Pedro Menchaca had died, and he and I were good friends. As a matter of fact, we played together as musicians. He was a tuba player. His son, Philip, is a professional trombone player down in LA, and we're acquainted. Together, Pedro and I solved all the problems of the schools. So in our conversations, he would pull up to play at Primetime Band every Tuesday night at La Colina.
And he would pull up in his pickup truck, and we would talk out there for quite a long time, and we would solve all the problems. So if you ever want to know what to do to help the arts access in this community, you could have just copy pasted all of our suggestions and it would have solved everything. So anyway, one of the things that I would encourage us to look at as we're looking at Prop 28 is to the Prop 28 spending as a district is to not model our solutions after what's been my experience. This year marks 10 years where I've needed a union, side letter to basically have classes before and after school. I've had conversations recently with admin with TOSA where suggestions have been made to add classes using Prop 28 at other sites, both before and after school, because that's the only place we can fit them anymore, right? And I mean, that's a very limited schedule into which we can insert new classes that we all want, we can agree, but that's the only place they'll fit, right? Seventh graders don't really have access to the arts because of so many requirements in their day. And now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful to the union for passing that every year for 10 years. And I'm also grateful for the Prop 28 spending to make me full-time earlier this year.
30 seconds.
Super grateful for that. But that's not a model that we can use to expand the arts, right? Teachers have to have their contract rights protected, and we have to find a way to put this stuff during the day. And, you know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I feel like Pedro would say the same thing. We need to find a way to, he would go on and on and on about the Dons needing to be a marching 100 once again, like it was when he was there. And I feel safe saying that he would say the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich Lashua, followed by Paulina Romero and Maria Angela Gonzalez.
Good evening. I'm sorry I couldn't stay to personally deliver my comments last meeting. I had a field trip, and this meeting started nearly an hour later than usual. It's difficult to plan on shifting sand, which I suppose is the challenge of balancing a budget in government work when several competing viewpoints insist you do things their way. So thank you for your faithful diligence. As Mr. Hughes kindly read to you, I remind you that any teacher speaking at a board meeting has already exhausted all their site options in good faith. Plainly put, students don't have the minimum access I need to do my job. This was the same before the mandatory health class was instituted, so it's not new. It was the same when Santa Barbara Junior High had over 800 students, so site enrollment is not the issue. I even had 40 students willing to join a choir club this year that didn't even start till 4 p.m., so let's not pass it off as lack of interest. We've designed a system where the arts are not given the minimum enrollment they need, and then we cut them in the name of the budget because they don't have enough students. It's the very definition of circular logic. It occurred to me most of you weren't here 13 years ago when we passed school bond measures H and I, designed to save various programs, including arts and science. I bring this up because a dozen years later, it's unfathomable that we would consider cutting, say, an entire science department. But there was a time where cuts to sciences were considered. Yet this spring, it seemed perfectly reasonable to eliminate entire arts departments, such as theater at Santa Barbara High School. We need an administration and board that holds the arts just as indispensable. Public comments till 2 a.m. made this very clear. Arts are a significant part of the local, regional, and state economies, and study after study has proven that they undergird success in all disciplines beyond their own, including test scores. The simplest first step is to eliminate the active neglect for arts in our district. The community has spoken loudly every time bonds and cuts are proposed, yet the system that's designed to slowly erode arts programs remains. The money's there, and thanks to things like Prop 28, it will continue to be. but there's not enough access. Every time money gets tight, we look at these dying arts classes, think about cutting them because there aren't enough kids in them, the public riots, things are rescinded,
30 seconds.
copy, paste, repeat. I'm the Performing Arts Teacher of the Year, and 4 of the 5 classes that got me that award don't exist anymore because of enrollment. My own kid cannot even take my class. We can do better.
Thank you. Paulina Romero, Maria Angela Gonzalez, and Josby Galindo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paulina Romero. I am a proud product of the SB Unified System, and I'm also an alumni of AHA. I am now also an employee of AHA. I stand here today to talk about why social emotional learning is essential in our schools. I thank you all for everything that you've done and for keeping us into the system. I have been lucky enough to be able to see social emotional learning through my own lens, through my own family that's gone through it, as well as the teens that I now get to work with. When I was 10 years old, I moved to the United States for the first time, and I was too shy to even speak out loud in class. I was probably unnoticed by most of my teachers, and I didn't feel like I had a home. When I found AHA in junior high, that was the first place that I felt like I could have a voice. It's the reason that I'm able to stand here today. It's the reason that I have the job that I have. It's the reason that I was able to attend university. Through AHA, I learned the skills to be able to speak out loud here, to have better relationships with my peers, to be able to know how to talk about myself and talk about my strengths in a way that made me seem interesting for a job or for a university. Now in my time with AHA, I get to see things differently because now I get to see how other teens are impacted, not just myself, not just my family. We get teens that didn't even have a place they called home until their senior year when they found us. We have teens who are at the brink of not existing anymore. We have teens that are too shy to even say their truth. And because of a program like this, whether it be in our 5-week program councils that we have, or it be in our Peace Builders program in our junior highs, or ally programs in the high school, or after school programs, teens have an opportunity to find who they are, connect with their peers, find what they care about in the community, and be able to advocate for themselves. Now I get to lead our youth advisory board and get to see some of these teens who would have never considered themselves leaders, would have never considered joining something like this because the system didn't set it up for that. They didn't even know the strengths that they had. They didn't even know what they cared about to be able to join something like this. And because of that, I am now able to stand in front of you and get to set the example for our teens who are following to be able to speak about why this is important. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mariangela Gonzalez, followed by Josby Galindo and Myra Oseguera.
Well, I'm here on behalf of AHA to express the importance of social and emotional learning. I myself have always been a shy, intimate personality by heart, but since joining and since stumbling upon them through the high school and finding out about their ally groups that they have after school at the high school, I have built my confidence and have felt free to be able to express myself in an area where I would never have imagined myself to be able to do so. I feel like I've gained a spot in my community and met amazing people through this nonprofit. The way I stumbled upon AHA was through my school. If not for that, I would have never gotten presented a lot of the opportunities I have been able to since discovering them. Me blossoming would have been very delayed or maybe not even present till this day. Feeling like you don't have a place in the world is a feeling no teen or child should ever experience. It is one that I have myself gone through and one I don't want anyone else to go through. So I feel like subtracting AHA and what they provide for the schools can and might even prevent a child from doing so. So I feel like if we want to build the future leaders, we have to keep those programs that will help them become that way. So I'm very thankful I came across them and very concerned that this social and emotional learning that they are providing can be cut from our schools and reaching those who need it.
Thank you. Josby Galindo and Myra Oseguera. Is Hospi here?
Good evening, board members, superintendent, cabinet. First, I'd just like to start by welcoming York Shingle and his change in leadership role in our association here at SBTA to president for the 25-27 term. That's right. I met York at La Cumbre Junior High. He demonstrated amazing leadership qualities back then. The last couple of years, he's been a TOSA. The knowledge from his experience in his time as ISS and MTSS will serve to develop systems to help students and teachers. He will collaborate with the district and board to bring positive change to our school system. In advance, thank you, York, for your service. President Escobedo, you said that you would like to co-write a resolution with your labor partners. I have reached out to our superintendent with the intent of doing that. We're still waiting to hear from you, the district. Lastly, SBTA is excited to present our State of the Union report here at the school board. We have requested for our report to be agendized on the May 27th school board meeting, and we're waiting to hear from this about this topic as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Myra Oseguera?
Buenas tardes,
Good evening.
miembros de la mesa directiva. Mi nombre es Mayra Oseguera
Good evening, board members. My name is Mayra Oseguera,
y soy mamá de un estudiante de McKinley.
and I am the mother of a student at McKinley.
Hoy estoy aquí para reconocer la gran labor de nuestros maestros.
And today I am here to recognize the great work that our teachers do,
que llevan la instrucción del programa de doble inmersión en nuestra escuela.
especially the teachers that teach the DLI program at our school.
También quiero reconocer la extraordinaria labor de nuestra principal, Daisy Ochoa,
I also want to recognize the great work of our principal, Daisy Ochoa,
que ha llevado nuestra escuela en un camino sólido y de éxito.
that has put our school on a solid path to reach a great achievement.
La colaboración del señor George Chingo como parte del equipo de trabajo de nuestra escuela ha sido fundamental para que esto se lleve a cabo.
And also the collaboration of Mr. York Shingle as part of our school's team has made the difference to make sure that we are on this path to achievement.
En reconocimiento a la semana de apreciación, doy las gracias a todo el equipo de trabajo de nuestra escuela de McKinley.
And in recognition of the Educators Week that just passed, I would like to thank all of the team at our school at McKinley.
Y les pido que continúen apoyando nuestro programa,
And I ask that you all continue to support our program,
ya que tenemos una gran demanda de estudiantes que desean ser parte de la familia de McKinley.
because we have a lot of students that want to be part of our McKinley family.
Por favor, mantengan nuestros certificados y no certificadas posiciones para que nuestra escuela siga en este camino de éxito.
So I ask you to please continue to support our staff who are certificated and classified so that we can continue to be on this path to success.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. That completes the open session, public comments.
Thank you. That then takes us to board comments and correspondence. And I wanted to take a moment to just commend the board and those that showed up to our special study session on Saturday. We did a lot of work and a lot of discussion on focusing and identifying shared priorities for the district. What made this effort a little bit different is that we did it in collaboration with the folks that were there. I'd like to thank Andrew Salzman, Jim Armstrong, Moni DeWitt, Sherry Ray, Alice Post, and York Shingle as well for being there. And I think we had some really good discussion, pushing and pulling Having the perspective of an educator there was very valuable. It actually shaped one of my favorite goals, or priorities rather. And next is we are going to actually send this out to the broader community for validation, to get feedback on it, to see if the shared priorities that we have, the type of feedback that we're going to get, what does it look like to accomplish those? Did we land in the right place? Maybe there are spaces for us to either expand, narrow, or add another priority area. One thing that we focused on for this meeting was landing on 4 priority areas that focused on student outcomes. And we eventually want to have a discussion about one that focuses on supporting staff. So I just want to say that, albeit it's the first step, it is an important milestone, and I think it reflects a shift towards really focusing our efforts. We're hoping to bring and grow a culture of transparency, inclusion, and partnership, and I think we experienced that on Saturday. I'm quite proud of the effort that everyone put into that space. I'm grateful to our facilitator, Valerie Thompson, and thank you again just to my colleagues and everyone there for leaning into the process with thoughtfulness and care. I'm proud of what we accomplished that day, but it's only the start. And for those that are curious, the priorities that we landed on were literacy, math. This next one I'm quite fond of is aligning instruction, assessments, and achievement, and then community and belonging. So we will work with SBTA and other community partners to develop a strategy for validating these priorities with the broader community. But again, I just wanted to give my heartfelt thanks to my colleagues and everyone that was there. So with that, do we have any other board comments or correspondence?
I'll just echo the enthusiasm about our meeting on Saturday, and I won't repeat the things that I heard from Gabe. But it was, it's great for me to sit up here and say one of the things we have to consider is that we're a very young board. By that I mean that our average tenure is 2.5 years. This board is new and young, but enthused and excited about doing the right thing and growing and learning to become better and better at governance to address these priorities that were put in place over the weekend. Yeah.
Ms. Munoz?
Yes, I'd also like to echo what President Escobedo mentioned and Mr. Banning. It was a great Saturday to spend the whole day together, to get to know folks from the Coalition for Neighborhood Schools, for the Santa Barbara Reading Coalition, which I really had not had a chance to interact with very much previously, and with our new, with our SBTA incoming leader, York Shingle, as well as other community leaders. It was good to have us come together and decide on the goals, as President Escobedo said. I would also like to focus on celebrating the life and dedication of Pedro Menchaca, who, besides being a proud Don and dedicated part of our school district, was also part of the Nightlife Car Club, and really was someone real for our students to be able to relate to. In the past, we had honored his mother here and had the opportunity to have most of the family here. They have a very large extended family. His mother, Etelvina Menchaca, was a community activist, Santa Barbara Dawn herself, and she had also attended Santa Barbara Junior High. She had a home where all the her sons and daughters were exposed to Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, who she knew well and marched alongside. She lobbied at the state and federal level for education and was a leader with the Migrant Education Program in enacting AB 1308 and SB 218 in the state of California. So this is the kind of home that the independent woman that he was raised by, and certainly continuing that tradition. So I'd like to, also honor him and very, I was honored to know him. And thank you.
Dr. Beal.
I never met Mr. Menchaca. I wish I had. So many people that contribute to this community. We had our Tech Use Committee meeting last week, and you may have been at the meeting where I mentioned some prospective board committees, fiscal, technology, student outcomes, strategic plan. And at the Tech Use Committee meeting, we started the conversation about that committee and subcommittees that deal with different issues of technology in our district. It very quickly became clear that the smartphone discussion had already been occurring in the district, and there was a lot of research done at various schools and parents ready to start talking about it in a more serious way. So we did make a decision at that committee to hold off on the board tech committee, which is still a proposed committee. We still have to decide what it might do for the community. But once again, we're trying to bring conversations to the district that involve community members and opinions and expertise so that we're making really good long-term decisions for the district. Anyway, to be short about this, we are going to have a series of 3 meetings, 2 here at the district office and 1 at Santa Barbara Junior High, and I'll mention those dates, where we're really going to speak about the smartphone policy, talk about the whole thing. If we were to say no phones at junior high, no phones at senior high, what do we do? How much will it cost? How do we enforce it? Really big discussions. So the first meeting will be here at the district office on Tuesday, May 20th. The second meeting will be at Santa Barbara Junior High, Thursday, May 29th. And the third and hopefully final meeting to suggest policy to adopt in the district, maybe for this fall, that would be great, is on Tuesday, June 3rd here at the district office. So it is a very important set of meetings. I hope people will participate and say what their opinion is, what they think will work. We'd love to have informed discussions. So it'd be great if people did their research and we have these bigger discussions and make some decisions and suggest that to the board for policy.
Ms. Caffrey.
Excuse me. I also want to thank President Escobedo for convening Saturday's board session. I think the more opportunities the board has to get together and engage in meaningful dialogue, the better. And then we really get to understand each other and work together as a team. I really appreciated the thoughtful contributions from all of my colleagues, and I'm encouraged by the collaborative spirit of the session. So now we're tasked with validating the priorities, and I am definitely interested in hearing how we can systematically engage the community so that we get diverse perspectives as we figure out the top priorities for our districts for the next few years. I also want to thank Superintendent Maldonado for working on the Prop 28 website and making that information very clear to the public. We've heard from many people about how confusing Prop 28 is and that they want real clarity on how we are spending Prop 28 money. And then I really would, I look forward to further conversation about how we implement our strategic arts plan and make sure that we are expanding our art and music offerings for students. And finally, I'd just say I'm looking forward to the upcoming governance study session on June 28th. Trustee Banning has really been a leader here on good governance, so I'm excited to work with my colleagues to identify concrete steps to strengthen how we govern and support our district.
Thank you. That closes out D9, and we're going to move on to E1, approval of resolution 2024/25-27, reduction of classified services, final layoff decisions. And we have Dr. Maldonado. Are you presenting this one?
Miss Ann Peak is here.
Okay.
Dr. Becky, unfortunately, is very ill today and couldn't be with us. So in his place, Director Ann Peak.
Welcome, Ms. Peak.
Thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me? Yeah, I did. I guess I need to be. The green light is on.
Yeah, the green light.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Escobedo, board members, and Superintendent Maldonado. The district's classified employees have made important contributions to our schools and our students. The district is grateful for classified employee service, care, and commitment to our students and the district's mission. The reduction in classified staff positions has not been taken lightly. We are thankful for the collaborative work we have engaged in with CSE leadership to effectively negotiate the reduction in force in a way that has no final layoff notices being issued to employees. Instead, CSEA and the district worked together to offer existing vacant budgeted positions to the least senior employees in the impacted classifications. Classified employees impacted by the reduction in force by being bumped into lower positions will have rights back to their previous classification should a position in that classification become available, per Article 23.4 of the agreement between the district and the California School Employees Association. With that, we recommend that you approve the Board Resolution 2024-25-27 for eliminating certain classified services.
Thank you. Ms. Munoz, do we have any public comment for this item? We don't. Do we have any questions from the board? Ms. Caffrey.
So I guess my question is more a process question. So I am wondering, as we make these decisions about classified and certificated employees, just how we understand what is our spending for next year. What clarity do we have on our budget? So I understand for this year, to fill our budget holes, we are being encouraged to vote for these changes. I'm just wondering, as a board, what kind of clarity we have on our spending for next year, and how we can think about the process for changing that for next year. I feel like it would be helpful as a board to have a quick conversation about this. But I also understand if we want to talk about it at a later time. Just how do we make decisions about spending and cost reductions when we don't know the budget for next year?
I personally don't have a good answer to your question. I think, does anyone else want to comment before Dr. Beal?
So the reduction in force discussion has two parts to it. It is about positions, and I would like to hear that when we eliminate a position, it is because it is not supported for some reason. There's a decision that's made that we've moved on to a different type of position, that funding isn't the only reason why we're eliminating the position. And that seems to have been, it feels like when we have these conversations, when the RIF process starts, that there's confusion. Are we eliminating this position because we can't afford it anymore? Or are we eliminating this position because we've moved on to a different program and we found that it is not effective? And that is a very complicated conversation, and I would have to opine that we need to have these discussions way ahead of time. We know as a board that we were anticipating this cut from July, and we were talking about having a more transparent fiscal process. For me, that meant really saying, okay, how are we going to do these cuts? And if we were to say these positions are no longer necessary, then we reach out to our partners and we say, what do you think? Are they necessary? Are they not necessary? And obviously financial transparency is part of that, because we have to really look at our budget and say, where can we cut that makes sense, that might save positions that are necessary? So the conversation that we were having at the same time as we were talking about saving money was, okay, if we take away these positions, we'll save money. But it really wasn't a conversation about how important these positions were to our programs, to our students, to the ecosystem. And that, like I said, because it is such a complex conversation, it needs to happen way ahead of time. We are always going to have the May revise. We're not going to know better we'll know as well in November as we do in March that we still have the same budget cut in front of us. We don't get information that comes in March and we're making these decisions in March, right?
I don't know if that's, I think I agree with you up until the last point. I think there is information that we have in March that we don't have in November. We get the governor's budget in January. We have an idea of where the state's going to land, how that's going to affect us. I'll hold off most of my comments. Ms. Caffrey.
I guess, so my question is basically, I feel like I'm still making these decisions kind of blind. Like I don't have enough information because I don't understand any of our spending for next year or the programs we're spending or the people. I also don't even know, our spending this year and how does our budget compare to our actuals or any of that information. So I just feel like we need to make these decisions because we have to balance our budget for this year. My question is, in a district of our size, with the complexity of our district, I think it is extremely typical to have a standing finance committee that gives the board this information, because without it, we're really making decisions without understanding. I mean, I personally do not feel like I understand what we've spent this year on by category or what we're going to spend next year. And I just think now is the time to talk about this. And we've had Superintendent Maldonado and I have had productive conversations about a standing finance committee. And I think we all as a board have also said, when I initially brought it, I think I was wrong to bring too specific a mandate for the committee. I'm wondering though, if we could bring back, and Dr. Maldonado has also suggested this, bring back a standing finance committee for our May 27th meeting and send you the language far in advance so that when we make these decisions, we have much more information, because I feel like we're making decisions without understanding all of our spending. And I still am not where I want to be in terms of understanding. I think Dr. Maldonado sent out a very good note to our community also about wanting to hear more input on changing our budget process. So I think having this type of standing committee could be very informative to the board so we can make decisions with full information, and then also figure out a process that is inclusive of the community.
And as you and I discussed at the next meeting on May 27th, we're bringing that item back to the committee.
I don't know if it...
I confirmed with you.
Oh,
earlier.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. So I think that seems like a good plan, because then I'm willing to go forward this year with days.
Any other questions or comments? I think for me, I kind of wish these items were the other way around, because there's a presentation later that talks about. Yeah, I do want to see and have the.
Pause the.
So I'm going to pause this item and I'm going to take us to E2, because there is a presentation that talks about a little bit more of the process that I think will make our conversation a little bit more rich. So I'm going to invite Ms. Hernandez up, and we're going to open up E2 and put a pause on E1. Welcome.
Good evening, board. Is it on? Yeah, okay. So here we are, the final layoffs. I did a presentation for the certificated side because I wanted to bring back information for you as to some of the items that you had asked for and where we ended up. I do want to say a little bit about the budget process, which I think might be helpful here. So tomorrow, fingers crossed, the governor is going to announce the May revise. So what this is it's the budget for next year as we're sitting in this year, and it's the changes that have occurred since January. So the budget's always kind of moving, always kind of rolling. So this is the governor's budget that was presented in January and now has had some changes to it based on the revenues that have come into the state and those kinds of things. So that will happen tomorrow. Then what happens after that is we take that information, we go to a lot of workshops because usually it's a kind of an overarching budget for the entire state, and the part for education is kind of in there, but it's not the only thing. So we'll go to some workshops and understand specifically how that helps school finance, and then even more distilled down how it affects community funded schools. So those are all the different parts. So we'll learn more, and it's going to be very tight and very fast, because after that, we're going to take that information and we're going to put that in our adopted budget. And that adopted budget needs to be ready for the public to see it on June 5th. So it's quick. But we are still not going to know everything. We are not going to know, for example, what our property taxes are going to be even for this year yet. So we're going to be doing an adopted budget for next year, and we won't have our property taxes numbers until probably July. Adopted budget will be adopted and done. The other part about it is we're going to have to estimate what our property taxes are for next year, and we're going to base that on what the tax assessor has given us as a percentage. So those are all still estimates. We won't know. But they're good estimates. They're good, educated, estimates. So all that is going to be built in there. And we're basing it on May revise, but in fact, that's not the true budget, because between May and June, I think it's June 15th, there's going to be this whole negotiation process that goes on in Sacramento between the two sides of Congress and the governor to try to take that budget and shake it out so that it finally becomes the actual budget that we're going to be using. So even after that, we will have a budget that is old because we're basing it on May revise. So I'm just trying to give you the understanding of how the budget is constantly changing and how we're taking the best information we have at that moment to build the budget. So that's where we are. And I wanted to just make one little comment as to what has happened between the time that we saw you in March and the time that we're seeing you now. When we did the preliminary RIFs at that time, we had 15 resignations or retirements. And normally in the past 4 years, we have had an average of 79. So this is a very, very different sort of year. So by the time that we had to do our preliminary RIFs, we didn't have a larger number to kind of understand how many retirements or resignations we might have. Since then, into this date, we have had 39. So again, 39 compared to 79. So it's kind of different. So between that time and now, we have had some people who have resigned and turned in their notices. And those are places where we can now take folks off of the RIF notice and fill in there, as long as everything lines up. So for people who think that, we just don't have a lot of information at that time in March. The other thing that happened on Thursday, we had a really wonderful presentation that we all got to go, many of us went to, with Jack O'Connell and Barrett Snyder, who talked about this sort of process. And Barrett explained to me that this whole thing about the March 15th preliminary notification is very, very difficult for everyone. And it's a good idea for those folks who think that they might get, riffed and may be able to go find another job. But we don't have a lot of information at that point, just as we didn't have a lot of resignations or retirements at that point. So it's very, very difficult not knowing a lot of information to do that. So I just wanted to kind of give you that kind of summary as to what's happened between when we talked about this and now. Now, Dr. Beal had said that we knew in July that there were going to be some significant cuts. We actually knew that before that. We knew this when we were, before we settled in our negotiations, we knew we were going to have to take some very significant cuts. And we started right away. So these are some of the things that we did in order to minimize staff reductions. I just have a list there. We reduced budgets, supplies and services. We froze hiring. We froze travel, except for those that were essential and needs for the district. And we all negotiated with our vendors to try to cut costs. And we pulled back this current year anything that we could save. So if we had purchase orders that were still had money left in them, we have pulled that back to save that. I want you to know that this has been deliberate. We have done this on purpose. And the reason we have done this is because we are trying to build up that reserve in this current year. So when we do our adopted budget, we estimate where we're going to end the current year. We still don't know that either, but we estimate that. And our hope and we know this because we've done a lot of really good work across the district. Everyone has made this a focus of trying to save money, that we are going to build up the reserve this year. So when we go to start the next year, we will be better off. So we knew this. Dr. Beal knew it. We all knew it, that we had to take some cuts right off the bat. And we did that. And I just want to say thank you to everyone in the district who worked so hard to try to help us to save positions. Now, we brought this to you before, and it's kind of, you saw this picture, and what you asked us to do was to say, we want to take those 3.5 FTE specials in elementary out off the RIF list. So we did, and that's that red X there. What you also asked us to do was to try to rescind the RIFs on the 2 ISSs. So that's the instructional support service. Thank you. I always get that mixed up. And we did that. So I want to show you what we did in order to save money or make cuts in order to keep those positions. And remember, they have to be ongoing cuts. If I were to cut it in 1 year, or if I had pulled back savings like we did in a lot of our departments and our purchase orders, it wouldn't have helped because people are ongoing. So we had to find ongoing cuts. So where we did that, in order to pay for the specials, the music and the arts and the instructional specialists, we are going to reduce some of our transportation routes, our Zoom bus routes. So we are going to eliminate the Goleta Valley Zero period. We are going to eliminate the Roosevelt route. We are going to consolidate 4 special ed routes. And that's going to be $770,000 of ongoing savings that we're going to use to pay for these positions. Now, I want to say something quickly about Zoom. Zoom is our yellow transportation, our yellow bus. They're the yellow buses that you see. And you'll see vans and you'll see bigger buses. It's all the different sizes of Zoom. When we do this, we will be down to only 3 general ed routes for 3 different schools. And the schools will be Adams, Monroe, and Washington. And these schools, in our policy, the reason that we have chosen these schools way back, years and years and years ago, decades maybe, is because of the dangerous roads that the students might have to cross in order to get to school, and the fact that they are very far from school. It's too far to walk and dangerous to walk or ride your bike. So that's why we have those 3. That's it on general ed Zoom yellow buses. The rest of the Zoom routes are for special education. It's for students with disabilities who have that requirement on their IEP. The IEP team gets together and determines that those students need to have transportation to school. So that's what Zoom is providing. Zoom is also going to sit down with the special ed team and see if we can work on some of the routes to try to maybe consolidate some more, maybe have some more savings. Zoom has been amazing. They have really been very, very thoughtful and looking at the routes, and they will continue to do so. So we are very pleased with them. Additional reductions and savings, we have an MOU with the city for park rangers, which we will not renew. We have we're going to reduce some of the peak hourly costs to provide some savings there, and we are going to have the in-house legal hire that we didn't have in our budget before because we weren't kind of sure about the cost. We're going ahead and put that in there. So all told, all of these cuts and reductions are going to cover those positions that you asked for us to rescind and keep. So we're very, very pleased with that. I think that's it. Let me see. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Do we have any public commenters for this item, E2?
E2, yes. We have Kate Lambert and York Shingle.
Yeah.
Followed by Joel.
Sorry, Ms. Lambert. I have to read the item into the record first. Give me 1 second. This item, E2, is approval of Resolution 2024/25-28, reduction of certificated services, final layoff decisions. Thank you.
Good evening, Board, and thank you for taking time to listen to our opinions and our ideas and our heartfelt statements. I have to say, it's very brave to say, I don't know enough and I want to know more. So thank you for saying that. It's wonderful to hear you guys having conversations in front of us. We really appreciate that. And I really enjoyed going to the park, being able to meet with some of my board members and being able to have coffee and meet some community members. That was really great. So thank you for that. As we move forward, try to become better at governance. Figuring out places we can make cuts, very important. Figuring out how we can move our relationship forward from where we're at to collegiate to one day being a collaborative group that can really do a big change. Means changing how we do some of our governance. So just because it's been something that's been done for a long time, just because it's something for safety, doesn't mean that we necessarily want to keep moving forward having RIFs regularly. Having RIFs is emotionally damaging to the employee. I will tell you, as someone who has had a RIF before and someone who got to watch my fellow workers get their RIFs this year, it throws you into a tailspin and you must keep it together in front of your students. Every day you must tell your coworkers, no, I have not heard yet. I will tell you when I hear. And you have to talk with your family and figure out your plan. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? How much money do we have to do that? That's big time problems. One of the things I would love for us to do as we move forward is start to build places that are homes. A home for all of these educators who want to stay for a long time. I got to enjoy some really cool retirement stories at our SBTA barbecue, and it was really touching to see how long some people were able to stay in one community, making a big difference. One person we didn't get to thank at that barbecue, and God, I wish we had, was Pedro. I will miss seeing Pedro in the hall. I will miss asking him for his ear about how to help specific students. And this was someone who gave 30 years, who returned to the school that they worked at, who made sure that his community grew and grew and grew. And he picked up the pieces everywhere he went.
25 seconds.
More Pedros, you have to keep the people around long enough to make those Pedros. His influence will continue to be felt, but we need to encourage all the people who are here to stay and to build those relationships within their community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have York Shingle, followed by Joel Block and Hosby Galindo.
Good evening. I'm York Shingle, MTSS at McKinley. I got a lot of shout outs tonight, which was lovely. and really hard because you're going to finalize me having to leave McKinley. So all of that collaboration and all of that good input I had on Saturday that I've been able to give to McKinley all year is done. In a year where we just heard we're still adding to the reserves this year, that was hard to hear. It is not a common practice at other districts to RIF over 70 people for 38 positions and only 2 people. And to then have in that presentation learning that we're still adding to the reserve this year is mind-blowing. Please fix this process before next year. Please have the number of RIF notices be much closer to what actually needs to be cut. Thank you.
Joel Block, followed by Hosby Galindo. And Kat Ross.
Good evening. I want to first start by saying that I very much am aware of how the state budget works, because one of the positions I have on California Teachers Association is the vice chair of the state legislation committee, which deals with issues and budget affects teachers and educators. So I'm very aware of the issues that you have to deal with. However, there are solutions. Now, with this board, despite public calls to realign the budget in such a way so as not to send out significant number of RIFs, the board sided with district personnel and initially sent out 70 plus RIFs. Then at the last minute, district personnel determined they could realign the budget so to reduce the RIFs to 2 or 3. What happened? Either the initial proposal, either the initial proposal for RIFs, the initial proposal for RIFs was based on a failure to try and find ways to amend the budget. A district decision was made that sending out many more RIFs than needed could be fixed later, ignoring the impact on the individual teacher or staff, or the financial situation of the district radically changed, or something else happened. I believe that something else happened, and I believe the public perception is that something else happened. So what is it that happened? I do not really believe that despite not having all financial realities known, that it changed to the tune of $9 million. Rather, because of the mistrust of teachers and general public have about the motivations of the district, I believe a way was found because of the planned massive protest that was to take place at the last board meeting. Whether accurate or not, this is teacher and public perception. Part of that is fed by a recent message that you referred to that contained really a lack of transparency. The message stated there would be 2 or 3 rests, but some teachers would have their positions reduced, resulting in a lower salary. How many? Also, 13 secondary teaching positions would be eliminated, and 22 other positions would be eliminated. Without any information, as Dr. Beal was saying, were those positions that were filled, unfilled, needed, not needed? What was the reason? How many teachers are going to have salary reduced? We don't know. Why haven't we been informed? There needs to be much more transparency, or this lack of trust will continue between teachers, board, and the public. And just parenthetically, I just would like the board to be aware of something that's actually not on this topic, but I had a student that family went to Mexico to get their papers fixed here in the country legally, and they were denied re-entry into the country. So I hope the board, actually, I don't know if the board can do anything or try to help the family, but I would hope we would look into that and at least let our parents know what to be aware of might happen. Again, all we know is they were here legally and they just were denied entry again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Joel.
Dr. Maldonado, can you follow up with Mr. Block about that?
I could do it.
And we can maybe connect with legal services, but also Mr. Carvajal's congressman. Thank you.
Hosby Galindo and Kat Ross.
Good evening again. I've said in the past, the budget and staffing needs to be thought through long before we need to give a reduction in force to nearly 10% of our unit. Morale is hurt and people are still shaken, and some are left wondering what their assignment is. Stress should not have to affect so many individuals. The district should continue to take measures today to relieve the stress of some of the individuals that they are still experiencing. We should also take steps to not have to notice that many people, if any, in the future. There are less than a handful of people still waiting to hear if they have a job tonight. There's still time to find a way to find these few individuals a job. Let's find a way before the end of the school year, please. Sending communication saying that you understand the situation is stressful is not enough. There is still healing that needs to happen. How are we going to do that? If we had very few resignation and retirements this school year, please give credit to the teachers for fighting for their own raise. It helped you guys retain teachers. Thank you to HR for working with SBT on an MOU to bring relief to those individuals that are still currently being affected by the reduction in force. Board members, you'll be voting tonight to finalize a reduction in force. If you pass this resolution, the MOU we signed will extend hiring rights, health benefit assistance, and training for affected unit members. I would like to thank school board members who fought to preserve some of the positions that were originally proposed in February and March. I really do appreciate that some of you have voiced that you were elected by the community, and as such, you fought to keep positions important to our community's families. I also appreciate your desire to have an effective systems in place to help both students and teachers. School board members, there's still a lot of work to be done in order for you to build trust with your labor partners. Taking practice steps to minimize or eliminate the need to notice people the RIP notices is one way. Making sure that you're well informed in June when budgets are proposed so that you do not feel tied down to decisions that were made in the summer. That's another way. That way you can vote on proposals in a way that reflects your values and what is needed in our educational community. Nevertheless, thank you for those board members who asked very pointed and difficult questions to ascertain the truth and transparency of the budget. Let's do better for the sake of our students and our educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Kat Ross.
The elimination of services that we're voting on tonight, 38 positions, is on the back of our students. 14 MTSS positions gets rid of academic interventions for our most needy students. 5 junior high teachers closes 25 classrooms. 13 high school positions closes 104 high school positions and classes. Valuing students looks like allowing 10th, 11th, and 12th graders to have a full day in school. Valuing students looks like offering a diverse range of courses, even if they're not completely full. Valuing students looks like retaining educators, because we all know schools work best when educators are there and understand all of the ins and outs of the place. Turnover does not help that. Valuing educators looks like planning for these things in advance. I would really like to push back on the idea that we just did our best. We did not just do our best. If we knew well in advance that we were going to have to make cuts, we could offer retirement incentives in September and therefore know how many people are going to retire in advance of January. In October and November, we could do the backwards planning that we need at all of our sites so we know what kinds of classes we need to offer. So when we go into January, we know what all of our positions are needed and therefore what needs to be cut, if anything. Then by the time we get to March, the number of RIFs that we need to give out will more accurately reflect the number of layoffs we expect to need. It is not okay to RIF 10% of our staff and then be like, whoopsies, oh, sorry, we tried our best. We are an outlier among high-performing districts.
high-performing districts are not doing this. Our district looks like the bottom fifth of the state of California when we look at the number of RIFs compared to the number of layoffs. Please, please do better. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Back to the board for questions. Any questions? Ms. Hernandez, I have a question. So you spoke about clawing back purchase orders and other, what I'm assuming are one-time expenses to put into the reserve. And can you talk a little bit about that and what's the difference between that versus some of the cuts that we're looking at to save position or save people and some positions?
Right. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We did like the transportation cuts, and those cuts, those are ongoing cuts that will be gone forever out of the budget unless at some point you decide to put them back in. The other part is we did as many cuts and cost savings measures this year, such as freezing any vacant positions, stopping some of the allowing travel only if it was essential or if it wasn't being paid out of the general fund, it was something a grant paid and that kind of thing. And then the other was we looked at all of our budgets and said, is there anything that we haven't spent to date? Can we just freeze whatever's left right now and just close some of those purchase orders right now? So we did as many things as we could think of to try to have some savings this year in order to help that going forward. When I talked about the supplies and services, we did that as part of knowing that we were going to have those kinds of cuts even before we knew what the negotiations were going to be, because we knew that we're going to have to do. So when you think of our expenditures, as 85% of our expenditures are salaries and benefits, they're people, you try to cut as many of the other things that you possibly can. We did that immediately, knowing that we were going to have to try to save as much as we could in the positions that we could. Does that answer your question?
For the most part, it's more, I think the only clarification that I need is about the funds that went into the reserve. Are we talking about one-time monies? Are we talking about ongoing monies?
So it's one-time monies.
Yeah.
It's one-time monies. And reserves are always one-time monies anyway. So, but what we're trying to do is save as much as we can this year in order to help us going forward. Because, again, we've got that across those couple of years of the reserves that we have to maintain for the state's purposes. That's why we're doing all of this as a reminder. Because of everything that we put into our budget that grew our budget, now we're worried about that second year out, or possibly now the third year out, wherever we are, making sure that our reserves are hitting what, at least 3%, because that's the state requirement. So that's why the county told us we had to make these cuts, because we were not going to hit it without the cuts. So a lot of that is one-time funds just for the current year to kind of help us going forward. And it's not to build up our reserves as I'm worried that some people are thinking like we're trying to grow our reserves. It's really to try to maintain and try to not have as many cuts, because we know in that second year we also are going to have cuts in 26-27, because that's where we are to date with everything staying the same.
And so the cuts in 26-27, we're talking about, I think, 4.5.
It was 4.2-ish.
Yeah.
Again, we'll see how we end up, but that's what was originally what the county had said we would have to cut. So really what we're trying to do as much as we possibly can is save as much as we possibly can and cut what we can so that we can keep, the 85% of our budget that's people. We want to protect that as much as we possibly can.
And the 4.2 is similar to this year where it has to be ongoing expenses. It's not
Correct.
necessarily one-time expenses.
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions from my board members before we enter into our discussion? Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Any comments from the board? Dr. Beal?
So the comment I made earlier about trying to plan ahead, as we're saying, we have 4.2 million that we have to save for next year, roughly. And actually, we'll probably talk about that very soon. So we know before July. And I support the idea of a finance committee because really this needs to be an ongoing discussion, just like we talk about with our students and their progress in English and math. We're watching it and we're saying, okay, every 2 months, what are we seeing? Is there improvement? Are there changes we need to make now, or there changes we need to make long term? Same with our finance situation. It is constantly evolving. And so when we know ahead of time that we have to make a certain amount of cuts, I think we can do things like say, okay, this grant is ending. So do we want to maintain these positions under this grant? Are we getting a good result out of this program? Are we going to end these positions because our work is done with these positions? So that separates the position discussion from the money discussion instead of it all happening at once. And that, I think, brings in of itself clarity because we're making educational decisions separate from our budgetary decisions. We do have to make some decisions together because we may find that we can't afford something, but it's really important. But then we get to have that conversation. If we can't afford this program, but it's really important and our budget is so tight, we have that conversation with our community partners. We have our conversation with our people in our districts, and we say, how do we do this? To me, that's the transparency part of it. What can we afford and what we cannot afford? And as we go through the cycles of November, January, we'll be adjusting. And so maybe there are things that are going to be green lighted, yellow lighted, red lighted. If we can keep these positions, we'll try. And hopefully when we come to the RIF process, it sounds like because of positions ending, if we decide to end a position, we will always have to RIF that person because that position is over, but not because of financial issues. So the discussion we ended up having between March and now is we looked at our transportation and we said, oh, where can we save money there? We didn't have Zoom for more than a year, so we really couldn't have that conversation. So I recognize that we do realize savings later in the year because we have unspent money, unfilled positions. Even with the unfilled position situation, are some of these positions just really hard to fill and we actually need them? Do we eventually want to fill them? So to just say they're over because it saves us money that we don't have to spend, that's even in of itself a very complicated discussion because we're here for education. So unfilled positions sometimes do need to eventually be filled. I wouldn't want them to be eliminated just because we're going to save money. And so out of this RIF process, and this is just my feeling about it, is it took me a long time. And, Celeste said a very good thing, which is I didn't know. And I didn't know if the MTSS positions were being retired because the program had reached its natural conclusion. So I came on the board after this SWIFT consultancy and the MTSS program, and my understanding is there was an end to the program. I was still hearing that some of the MTSS positions, we heard that about McKinley, was important and was advancing the program there for the DLI program. And so I would like to have had a more precise evaluation of those positions, and maybe we wouldn't keep it under the MTSS umbrella, but we could say we're going to have this support and keep that person the support if we could. Just having those really strong educational decisions. The high school course credit reduction has been a very confusing discussion for me because when we started talking about keeping the specials at the elementary school, all of a sudden in the high school space, the reductions increased. And so that seemed to be not as much an enrollment issue as okay, if we can't save money here, we're going to save money here. And so that was confusing to me. I don't really know if that was the actual decision. And I'm still struggling with the consequences of that course reduction in the high school space. I hear from many spaces that, we had underfilled classes. It made sense. And these are from people within the district. I'm not saying at the district office. This is actually at the school sites. And so that seems to make sense to be efficient. And some students are going to go to City College and they don't need to take all their credits at the high school. They're going to be in dual enrollment. if that sort of discussion is happening, then that's good. But I'm also hearing other things, that classes are not being offered, and even more complicated discussions about this class is small, but it actually functions better as a small class. How do we make those decisions? So having those types of discussions, whether it's via finance committee, where we just talk, we say, you know, can we afford this? Really, it's can we afford this? And if programs have to end, that we have that honest discussion that the program is great. As Board Member Banning said, we'd love to be fully funded for everything we want in the district. We're not always going to be in that situation, maybe never. But I would like to discuss every single thing, really, and that can't happen at a board meeting. It cannot happen at a board meeting. So I would support a finance committee. I would support having a plan where we say, these are things we absolutely want to preserve, and these are things that we have to think about that we may not be able to afford. And as the money comes in, there has to be flexibility. But I think as long as we're having those discussions and people understand our reasoning, they can be flexible with us, right?
Ms. Caffrey.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Ms. Hernandez for your work finding those transportation savings. Yes, I know it was a lot of work, so thank you very much. And President Escobedo, thank you also for bringing the Finance Committee to the board at our next meeting, because I really thank you both for your leadership on this one. And I think in the next year with the Finance Committee, we'll have a lot more clarity, and that we will not need to send so many RIFs is my hope. And I think that our whole board is really aligned on the idea of having more clarity around our finances and being able to make decisions with more information. I don't want to speak for you, but that is my impression in our conversations, that would be very helpful. And I think our finance committee is going to get there if approved and with the language that we're going to bring. So I think the process will change next year if we can take these steps. And so, yeah. We're in, I feel very hopeful as a board. I think based on how we worked together on Saturday and our commitment to students and our commitment to teachers, I think we're really going to get there. So I look forward to the May 27th meeting.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay. No? Okay. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, and I agree in large part, and I do think a finance committee makes a lot of sense. I am hoping that there can be a more collaborative process. I think we took a really good effort at increasing the knowledge about the budget, the different parts of the budget, and I think that there's a fundamental understanding that may not have existed in the broader community about the complexity of school budgets. It is a complex. We were fortunate enough to be there on Thursday to hear from Barrett and Mr. O'Connell. And I don't know how we can create more spaces for them to talk about the school finance, what's happening at the state, even the opaqueness of some state agencies that are making decisions about the budget. That was actually quite insightful, and I think more opportunities to get the board members in front of them. I don't know if it's a one-on-one or, would be helpful as a suggestion, because I got a lot from it, if that's possible. Go ahead.
Just to respond to that, I think if we do go with this finance committee, they could be advisors to that part as well. We can bring.
That's a great idea. Because I've never heard someone talk with so much specificity in very accessible ways about really complex processes and what limitations there really are to even get the information. There are people that, like himself and others, that spend their entire time trying to understand the state budget and predict what's going to happen for things like the May revise. And it's not even the fact that they don't understand it for comprehension. They there are 8 state agencies that don't even release the information and they're making decisions. And I thought that was actually quite helpful for us to understand why it's really difficult to have information at really key parts of the budget making process. It's not an excuse to say that we can't do it earlier and we can't get more information and start thinking through and making these decisions. And I think it's actually a very thoughtful way that you presented it, Dr. Bill, of saying, let's separate the educational decisions with the budget decisions and then identify the areas where that's not possible, and let's have those discussions. I thought that was actually quite profound, and it's something that I very much support and that we can start right this summer. One of the pieces that I too struggle with is I would like to, as we're developing, what are the trade-offs between some of the cuts that we're going to entertain? Because I would love to sit up here and tell you that we can find the money to continue doing everything that we're doing now. It's just not true. And I think this next $4 million is going to be far more difficult to solve for than the initial 9.8. And when we're talking about ongoing costs, there are only so many categories that are not salaries and benefits that are ongoing costs. And we're going to do our best, and we're going to try and do it in collaboration with our union partners, with the community. I think the Financial Oversight Committee is one of those ways. But I do have to say, and I don't say this lightly, I really do think that this next $4 million is going to be a tough thing to solve for, and we're going to have really difficult discussions, and we're going to do our best. We did a really good job actually in the elementary space of being pretty precise with the RIF notices to the positions. In the secondary space, I think that's where there's room for improvement. This course take topic, I think we could have done a better job because we did a lot of learning between March and now on what did that mean? What does master scheduling look like? We don't need to be in the weeds, but we do need to have an understanding of what the trade-offs are. What does it practically mean for our students? What does it practically mean for our educators? And what I'm hearing is a commitment to do just that and do it far earlier. I just want to say, I know that these RIFs, the preliminary RIFs that we issued in March, do have a real human impact. It's not just numbers or positions, these are actual people. And while we were able to maintain many of the people, and we eliminated some of the positions, and I know that that also has an impact on people, even if it means that they're returning to another position, we're going to be in this position again, and I just need to prepare us to have some really difficult conversations, because I think one of my frustrations, not just with TK through 12, but when a lot of these one-time monies came in, I don't know that there was this thought that we wouldn't get more one-time money that would extend it. And we invested in a lot of positions, and I think at the time we needed to, but it put us in a position, I think, where we are now. And I kind of wish, I wasn't there, so what do I know? But I wish there was a little bit more forward thinking about contracts with end dates that were more, we've been talking about this, but I don't think people actually came to terms with the fact that we would have to end some of these positions. And now we're here, and we're going to do everything we can to keep hold of people, but we are still going to have to reduce positions, because that $4 million of ongoing funding, some of it is going to have to be positions. And what I'm hoping is that it's not people. And so we'll look at every creative way possible. But I want to thank our staff who did a lot of hard work between March and now to try and find those creative ways to save as much money as possible, to try and build that reserve. I am worried about the reserve a couple of years from now. I hope I'm wrong. But I just want to thank everyone who's reached out. I will appreciate the collaboration between SBTA, CSEA, HR, and the work that we did there. The work needs to continue this summer, and I'm hoping that it does. So thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to everyone. This is not the position that we wanted to be in, but I think we're on track to have a more transparent, a more accessible, more opportunities for input, and it make the decision-making process better. So with that, are there any other comments? Do I have a motion?
I motion. Do I have to read the whole thing?
I'm sorry, which we combined two.
We're on E2.
Okay. I motion approval of resolution 2024-25 through 28, reduction of certificated services, final layoff decisions.
Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. It passes unanimously. We're going to go to E1, approval of resolution 2024/25-27, reduction of classified services, final layoff decisions. Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any. Is there a motion?
I move to approve resolution 2024/2527, reduction of classified services.
I second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. That closes out our action agenda. Thank you to staff. And we will now move to report and discussion agenda F1, Master Plan for Emergent Multilingual Learners report.
While Dr. Martinez makes her way up, board members, we are bringing this as a first read for you. We are keenly aware that we bring you lots of information with lots of things to read, and we'd like for you to hear from Dr. Martinez. I know we have some parents that have been patiently waiting as well. We want to thank and bienvenidas esta noche con nosotros a las mamás. Thank you to our moms who are here today as well, who've been working with Dr. Martinez. The intent of this item is for you to once again just hear about it for this first round. We do intend to bring it back for a final approval. And this is in response to some of the concerns we have now. I do want to warn you, we have a lot of things going on May 27th, so we'll have to do some really great agenda management then. But with that, welcome Dr. Martinez.
I think this one. Okay. Good evening, President Escobedo, board members, Dr. Maldonado, and Executive Cabinet and Community. I am pleased to share a board report on our work on the Emergent Multilingual Learners Master Plan. My intent tonight is to build a shared understanding of key historical shifts impacting the education of emergent multilingual learners. I want to share with you the intent and the vision of the plan and provide you a summary of the process of development, and then peruse through some of the chapters so that you have and then share with you kind of an overview of the chapter so that you have enough information to be able to review that prior to approval of the next board meeting. Before I do that, I want to just share with you just a few key historical shifts that have impacted the education of emergent multilingual learners over time. And this is just to share with you 5 different events and ensuring that the EML Master Plan is in responsive of that Castañeda standard that you see there from 1981. It doesn't take into consideration the California ELA-ELD framework when it was written, ensuring that, we provide that intentional designated and integrated ELD, and ensuring that all of our educators are educators who support language development. We also want to highlight the California English Learner Roadmap, which is a grounding document. It calls for us to go into this perspective of being very asset-oriented and needs-responsive for emergent multilingual learners and embrace multilingualism as a whole. So you will see that in our Emergent Multilingual Master Plan, that document is infused and the values are in alignment with the California vision. The other guiding document would be the one for educating our emergent multilingual learners who also have a disability, and ensuring that we have an understanding that that is also very complex to ensure that we do provide them both services. And locally here in Santa Barbara, we already took a major milestone in some of these efforts by adopting the Meta Plan, which really introduced or reintroduced bilingual education to Santa Barbara from the late 90s. And it initiated the McKinley program, which is the dual immersion program. And it really shifted the mindset on being more assets-based and needs responsive. And you will see that in the master plan, that vision is also infused because it is a continuation of that work. Not only did that bring multilingualism to Santa Barbara, but then it also lends to how do we then serve our emergent multilingual learners in the other program, which is a structured English immersion. Here you can see is just a brief intent of the plan. It is intended to align with those efforts historically that I shared with you previously on the other slide, to be very intentional, transparent, to have our services memorialized in one document. But it's also a values-driven approach to ensure that we are held to our commitment for emergent multilingual learners. Here you can see that we took the Meta core values and we infused those in the mission and vision for that statement for emergent multilingual learners. So a lot of guiding documents are considered when these were written by the committee and affirmed by the core authors. I want to just refocus our attention to who we serve. I know you've seen this several times. We serve approximately 12,000 students in our district, and those are the demographics by race and ethnicity. When we think of our students by language profiles, we have approximately 1,500 students who are emergent multilingual learners. We have approximately 400 students who are initially fluent, which means they came to our system with knowledge of another language, but they did not need services for supporting English development because they were already fluent. And then we have about 3,200 students who are reclassified, meaning that at one point they were emergent multilingual learners and now they are proficient in their English and are mainstreamed. And then we have our students who English is predominantly their dominant language. And that's 55%. Here, I just want to focus our attention in the one assessment that really does measure the growth of emergent multilingual learners would be the LPAC. And that is then measured by the dashboard. And if I could just draw your attention on the 2024, when you add up the students that have gained an LP level, that have maintained the LPAC 4, or have maintained their levels 2 and 3, that is about 80% of our students who are either maintaining or demonstrating growth, a little over 80%. And then the 16% are those who we want to look closely to ensure that we are providing interventions or support to support their language development. So when those scores improve, ultimately the academics does too. And because our state is also very responsive to the needs of students who have a disability, they did create an alternate LPAC, and it was launched in 2023. And I want to say that those scores are reflective of the learning curve of those that were administrating the assessment for the first time. And our 2024 scores are a little more in alignment with how our students performed. And as you can see there's again 60-some% of growth, and then we still have room for improvement for our students who do take this assessment. Now I want to just acknowledge some of our administrators are here who were part of this, core authors, and some of our ISSs are also here presently. They are the team that really helped draft the chapters, that worked side by side with, as a collaborative team with the support of LMU. They are the ones that helped in the process of organizing all of the advisory committees that we held, and just honoring their contribution, their tireless hours, and just commitment in making this draft as accessible as and in response to the feedback that we were receiving. Here, I want to just kind of share with you that the plan was developed, and I think of it as 3 phases. The first phase is really just looking at, it's a lot of internal review of documents, looking at our feedback that we've received from the federal monitoring findings. Also compiling our own processes in areas in where we can improve, or things that we can highlight and which we want to continue to strengthen. And this is where all the planning happened, ensuring that we had a guiding coalition. We included our ISSs as part of that process, structured time for, or structured an advisory committee for this process, identified time where we were going to enlist DEMLOC and other groups. And then from October to April is really where all the writing happened, and side by side is where we held our sessions and where we elicited the support from and feedback from the advisory committee, which they helped us shape the development of the chapters with their feedback. We shared excerpts at the beginning, and then we shared the complete document as you see it. And in fact, some of the feedback was even included before it was provided as a shareable draft. And then at the end on May is really about the finalization, the translation, the design, the other supporting documents that will be needed in order for them to be accessible for different audiences, and just working on bringing you a final draft by May 27th. Here you can see that Chapter 1 is really zeroed in on that initial identification, initial assessment, and placement of the child when they enter our school system. On Chapter 2, we describe the instructional programs and services for EMLs, including the multilingual pathways that are open to all. In Chapter 3, we talk a lot about student progress monitoring, the annual assessment, which is the LPAC, and the reclassification process. On Chapter 4, we talk about how, as a district, we ensure that our staff is properly credentialed, and which our professional learning or our professional development that is fundamental in supporting emergent multilingual learners. Chapter 5 is devoted on family engagement, and this is where we delineate structures. For instance, the role of MLAC, the role of DEMLOC, and some of those really key committees that our families can be enlisted. Chapter 6 is devoted on all our evaluation and accountability and funding for this program. And before I go into the next steps, I want to invite 2 of our parents who have provided a lot of the feedback throughout this process, and they would like to share a testimony with you. So I want to invite Mayra Oseguera to come up first.
Pues buenas noches otra vez.
Good evening once again.
Pues yo soy Mayra Oseguera.
My name is Mayra Oseguera.
Tengo mi estudiante en el programa de doble inmersión en McKinley.
And I have a student in the DLI program at McKinley.
Ha sido un honor formar parte del programa META.
So it has been an honor for me to be part of the META program,
que fue aprobado en el 2020 y puesto en función en el 2021.
And that plan was approved in 2020 and began implementation in 2021.
y que da la oportunidad a nuestras familias a tener la opción de registrar a sus estudiantes en un programa de doble inmersión.
And this gave our families the opportunity to have an option to enroll their students in a dual language immersion program.
Como parte del comité de IMLA de nuestra escuela de doble inmersión,
As part of my school's IMLEC committee, it's a DLI school,
he sido parte de la colaboración del Plan Maestro.
I've been part of the collaborative process of developing the master plan.
El Plan Maestro fue muy esperado y casi podemos verlo terminado muy pronto.
And we've been very excited waiting for the development of this master plan, and we are almost seeing it be completed.
Los padres de nuestras escuelas y de muchas otras escuelas están muy emocionados y positivos con la culminación de este master plan.
So the parents at our school and many other schools are very excited and are feeling positive with the news of the culmination of almost completing this master plan.
La doctora Martínez ha trabajado muy fuerte con el equipo de padres, maestros principales, incluyendo nuestra principal 18A.
So Dr. Martinez has worked hard with her team, including community members, parents, students, principals, including our principal at McKinley, Ms. Ochoa,
para completar todas las piezas de este plan maestro.
in order to complete all of the different sections of this master plan.
Este plan dará los lineamientos para que cada escuela provea el mismo nivel de instrucción.
So this plan will create the alignment so that all schools can provide the same type of academic instruction.
Y el apoyo para los estudiantes multilingües emergentes.
And the support for emergent multilingual students.
En su proceso de la reclasificación como hablantes fluentes de inglés.
In their process to become reclassified as English proficient.
Y ha sido un honor formar parte de todo este proceso.
And so it's been an honor for me to form part of this whole process. Thank you.
Now we would like to invite another parent that has been highly involved, Odilia Gutierrez.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos los miembros de la mesa directiva y a todos los presentes.
Good evening, board members and everybody here present.
Mi nombre es Odilia Gutiérrez y soy madre de familia de una emergente multilingüe en Dos Pueblos High School, miembro del EMLAC de esa escuela y copresidente del DEMLAC.
My name is Odilia Gutierrez and I am the mother of an emergent multilingual student at Dos Pueblos High School, and I'm also a member of the EMLAC at my school and also co-president of the DEMLAC.
Quiero con mi participación honrar a los padres de familias que han aportado su tiempo, compromiso, ideas, preguntas y peticiones durante las sesiones de EMLAC y DEMLAC.
So with my participation, I want to honor all of the family members and parents that have collaborated with their time, their commitment, their ideas, their questions, and their requests during the sessions of our EMLAC meetings and DEMLAC meetings. And I want to thank them for their professionalism and for the knowledge that they gave us.
Y agradecer el profesionalismo, conocimiento aportado, tiempo y dedicación del equipo responsable de elaborar el plan maestro para estudiantes multilingües emergentes. A los presentes y a la doctora Martínez.
So I also want to thank the members of the committee that created the master plan for emergent multilingual students, and I want to thank their professionalism and for all of the knowledge that they have put into this plan and their time and dedication.
Como madre de familia nueva al distrito escolar con una estudiante EML llegada hace 2 años, me propuse aprender del funcionamiento del distrito escolar para conocer de qué manera apoyan a los estudiantes recién llegados.
So as a mother of a student who was new to the district, who was also an EML that arrived to this school only 2 years ago, I set myself the goal of learning how all of this worked and how the school district worked so that I could know what way I could best support my student and other students that are recent arrivals.
¿qué está estipulado para apoyar a estos estudiantes que no solo se encuentran en una posición de aprendizaje diferente, sino que también pueden enriquecer a nuestra comunidad con sus conocimientos lingüísticos, con culturales, habilidades y experiencias previas? Por lo que considero que como comunidad es en el mejor de nuestro interés que se honre y valoren y potencialicen todo esto que ellos ya aportan.
So I wanted to know what were the policies with regards to supporting students that not only were in a different situation of their learning process, but who also would be able to enrich our community with their knowledge, their linguistic abilities, their cultural practices, with their skills and experiences that they would bring with them. And so that's why I think that as a community, it's in our best interest that we honor and value and empower all of this.
Participar en conocer el plan maestro en su etapa de desarrollo, la verdad me ha enriquecido bastante. De inmediato pude apreciar que contempla esos valiosos recursos de nuestros estudiantes.
Participating in the process of the master plan and being in the development stage, that really helped me a lot. I immediately saw that those values that I was speaking of earlier were really resources for our students.
Como padre de familia que he leído cada uno de los capítulos del plan maestro, en mi opinión, están bien estructurados, con un lenguaje entendible, ampliamente informativo, con metas delineadas, con expectativas altas para los que los van a ejecutar. Esto yo considero que valora y honra al personal y al liderazgo de las escuelas. Si el plan contempla estándares altos, es porque podemos confiar que existe personal que estará a la altura para ejecutarlo.
And as a mother, I have read each one of the chapters, and in my opinion, it's well structured with language that is understandable and is very informative, with well-defined goals and with high expectations for those that will implement this plan. And this, I really believe that values and honors the staff and the leadership in the schools. And if the plan has high standards, that's because we know that we can trust that our existing personnel will be able to execute that.
Me complace también saber que el plan contempla objetivos medibles y evaluables.
And I'm also pleased to see that the plan has goals and objectives that are measurable.
Considero que el plan maestro cumple con lo descrito en el capítulo 2 del mismo, donde cita: los materiales educativos reflejan la diversidad de culturas y las actividades celebran los orígenes de los estudiantes, fomentando una atmósfera de inclusión y comunidad.
And I believe that the master plan really achieves what we've described in chapter 2. It says the materials reflect the diversity of cultures and activities that will be celebrated by the students and will be celebrated in what students bring, creating an atmosphere of inclusivity and community.
Estoy expectante del impacto positivo que tendrá una vez que se apruebe.
I look forward to the positive impact that this plan will have once it's approved.
Gracias a todos por su atención.
Thank you very much for your attention.
You can put that presentation. So I want to just thank the parents who were involved in this process and obviously all the teachers and counselors and assistant principals and the staff that provided input to shape the draft that was shared with you. This is just a summary of 6 chapters. Really, the next steps is now to finish the design and the organization for public presentation and bring it back to you on the 27th. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Do we have any public comment for this item?
Yes, Mark Schindel.
Good evening again. I'm glad we're moving forward with the unified practice for supporting our EMLs. But if this document is meant to be the driving factor, it needs more clarity. In that first chapter on page 9, it says, for English learners with disabilities, schools should have processes in place to facilitate the review of students' file by school personnel to place the student in a program model that matches the student's linguistic and academic strengths and needs. And it goes on. What are those processes? What are those metrics? So I agree, that will be great. But if we just say that and don't provide that training and explicit information to the sites, then it ends up being different and going to vary based on who is in what role. And since this report also addresses reclassification, I'd like to bring up that kindergartners have to take a harder test than their peers to get the STAR scaled score to reclassify. There are 2 STAR English tests, the regular one and then the early literacy. We expect kindergartners to just take the early literacy at all sites, but in order to count their scaled score, they have to take the harder one that they get to later in elementary school. That is something we set here as a district, so that is something that we could change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Also, I have cards from Mayra Oseguera, Socorro Ramirez, and Odelia Hernandez.
Pues otra vez, buenas noches, Mayra Oseguera.
Once again, good evening. My name is Mayra Oseguera.
Como padre de familia, tengo diferentes funciones y roles representando a nuestros estudiantes aprendientes de inglés y multilingües emergentes.
As a parent, I have different roles and duties representing our emergent multilingual students.
Y creo que es importante agregar que el Master Plan tiene un contenido extraordinario para apoyar a nuestros estudiantes.
And I think it's important to add that the Master Plan has great information to be able to support our EMLs.
Pero quisiera que este Master Plan, cuando sea aprobado, sea honrado. Y a esto me refiero, que se tome en consideración todos los gastos que se va a implicar para que este sea implementado de una forma apropiada.
But once approved, I would like to ask for this plan to really be honored, and I want you to think about all of the expenses and all of the work that went into this plan.
Cuando escucho que las posiciones, algunas muy importantes, que son enfocadas al apoyo de nuestros estudiantes con estas necesidades de reforzar su aprendimiento del inglés, eso me preocupa.
So when I hear about some positions being cut, especially those positions that are dedicated to serve our students, that really concerns me.
Y que están muy marcadas en el plan maestro.
And that's very prominent in this master plan. Those positions show up in that master plan.
So, como padre y miembro de la comunidad, quiero ofrecer mi ayuda. ¿Qué podemos hacer para generar un ingreso extra al distrito para ayudar a cubrir algunos gastos?
So as a parent and a member of this community, I want to offer my support. What else could we do to raise funds or find that funding to be able to support these positions that would do the work of this master plan?
Nuestra comunidad es muy buena organizando y apoyándonos unos a otros. Solo necesitamos que nos digan qué podemos hacer para trabajar.
Our community is really good at organizing and working together and collaborating to find solutions. All we need is tell us what we can do to find those solutions.
Para que todo este trabajo que se ha hecho por meses sea de verdad honrado y se lleve a cabo apropiadamente.
So that all of this work that's been taking place for months and months can really be honored and implemented correctly.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Socorro Ramirez.
Buenas tardes, miembros del Consejo y más presentes.
Good evening.
Maldonado.
Good evening, board members and everybody here present. Dr. Maldonado.
Mi nombre es Socorro Ramírez y yo soy una madre de la comunidad.
My name is Socorro Ramirez and I am a mother here in the community.
Pero tuve 3 hijos en este distrito, graduados de Dos Pueblos High School.
I had 3 students in this district and they all graduated from Dos Pueblos High School.
Y estoy orgullosa de ellos porque han logrado o están logrando sus metas para estar en una universidad.
And I'm very proud of them because they're all achieving their goals and they're studying at a university.
Y yo como madre de familia he estado participando en los comités de DEMLAC aquí en este distrito.
And as a mother, a parent here in the district, I've been participating in the committees MLAC and DEMLAC.
Y pienso que toda esta ayuda que doy como madre, participando en programas de la escuela, he ayudado a mis hijos a salir para que lleguen a una universidad.
And I feel that my participation in these committees, that has helped my children be able to go to the university.
Y también he estado participando en el plan maestro como miembro de la comunidad.
I've also been part of the committee for the master plan as a community member.
Y yo apoyo al plan maestro siempre y cuando ellos se enfoquen en los estudiantes multilingües emergentes.
And I support the master plan as long as the support for EMLs is there.
Porque por muchos años nuestros estudiantes han necesitado mucha ayuda.
Because for many years our students have needed a lot of support.
Y pienso que el plan maestro va a ser una ayuda para ellos.
And I think that this master plan will be a great help for them.
Porque nuestros estudiantes multilingües emergentes necesitan mucho del apoyo de los maestros, así como de sus padres.
Our emergent multilingual students need a lot of support from their teachers and their parents.
Es por eso que estoy aquí para pedirles a todos, tanto ustedes miembros del consejo como maestros y todo el equipo del plan maestro.
And so that's why I'm here, to ask you, board members, and also all of the teachers and staff,
para seguir apoyando a nuestros estudiantes multilingües emergentes.
I ask you that we continue to support our emergent multilingual students.
Gracias a todo el equipo y personal que está trabajando en este plan.
And I want to thank all of the staff members and all of the team members that are working on this plan.
Gracias.
Thank you.
And Odilia Hernandez? Okay.
All right. Any questions from the board? Dr. Beal?
I have some questions for Dr. Martinez. So this does seem like a very complex plan. I tried to read every part of it, and I'd have to say, since I'm not an educator, I understood a fair amount, but not all of it. So I appreciate that you've come up with this very detailed plan, and it does appear that the community is happy to have a plan in place. So my questions have to do with basically the clarity and the implementation of the plan. And I had asked a question, and maybe you can answer this for me. And one of it is I did ask how many teachers do we have in the district that have do we call it the BCLAD certification, where they're bilingual? And I did receive a response, but I was a little confused about the response. So I would expect that that is very important for our EMLs to have bilingual teachers in the schools to support the ELD and all that other stuff. The answer I got showed that maybe this is for next year, but at Monroe and also what's one other school, the elementary schools in Harding, there are no bilingual teachers. So I'm confused. How do we have a program that supports EMLs if there are 0 bilingual teachers? Is this incorrect information?
No, it's correct. So we in the district we have approximately 50 some teachers that have a BCLAT or a bilingual credential, and in the state of California, we don't need a bilingual credential to serve emergent multilingual learners. You need an EL authorization, English learner authorization, which means through methodology you serve students who have another language. It could be Spanish, it could be German, it could be Russian. Really, the language is irrelevant. The methodology that teachers employ is to provide access and use language supports to make their content accessible.
I see. Okay. I guess I am curious, and I would love to have feedback on if that is effective or if it could be a more effective program if we had bilingual teachers. I understand that EML doesn't just apply to one language, right? That there could be different languages, and it's just everybody is trying to learn English. Another.
So there are 2 programs we're going to be defining for the district from Chapter 1, if I'm correct, Chapter 1. Chapter 2, thank you. This district will now, once this plan is adopted, will offer dual language immersion, which is at McKinley, Salvador Junior High, Salvador High. And the second program is called Structured English Immersion. So you're immersed in English. The credentialing piece, the BCLAT, would be required if you're the Spanish-speaking or, well, in this case, Spanish-speaking teacher, only for the dual language immersion schools. Okay. The rest of the schools don't have to have teachers if they're not offering dual language. They do, however, have to have an EL authorization, as Dr. Martinez mentioned. I hope that clarifies why some schools do and some don't.
It does. I'm just kind of curious about the efficacy of that. And because I simply don't know. Okay, so that was one question I had. The other question I had to do with Chapter 6, and that is about how we are going to review our program to see if we are getting the results that we would prefer or we'd like to see. In one of your slides, you talked about students who are advancing a level, students who are maintaining. And if I understand the system correctly, we really want to if we want to have students that reclassify before the end of 6 years, we really want to have a large proportion in the advancing 1 level, correct? Because they really need to advance to English proficiency. So that is our goal, right? To not just maintain, even though there's a large percentage if we count maintain plus advance, we really want the larger percentage to be in the advancing pool. So that would be one of our goals, right? If we're going to set targets.
One thing I want to also offer is that within level 2, there are 2 growth targets. So when it's maintained, it could be going from 2L to 2H, but they're maintaining a level 2. So there is growth within that. Okay.
Well, then maybe we need to show that, right? So that we understand as a board if people are getting closer to that growth phase. If, we're really trying to look at subpopulations. We've mentioned that in a lot of our discussions here. I would love to see, I know that this is a discussion and it's being brought back to us at the next meeting. I would like to see for Chapter 6 more clarity about what the exact plan is to maintain EML efforts at every site because we are talking about that. What are our targets? What are our benchmarks? I know that we're talking about these formative assessments. How often are they going to be given? And more importantly, I know that you have spoken to a lot of people at the different sites about making this plan, but I would like to know if you've had the conversations with the people who are actually in the positions of teaching EML students about those benchmarks, what is needed at every school, and if we do formative assessments throughout the year, how often can they happen? What should happen? When I did a little bit of research, I used my friend ChatGPT because ChatGPT teaches me a lot. I simply asked the question, in looking at schools that have been successful in California in advancing their EMLs to proficiency, what strategies, and there were different strategies for different schools, but some of them that I thought were really great and are not discussed in our Chapter 6 is having a dashboard so that for every student, as we're following them during the year, we're seeing that they're progressing. And we are seeing, just like we talk about that with our ELA curriculum, if somebody's falling behind, that there is a specific intervention that starts to happen. So we're not just looking at the exam at the end of the year. I know the formative assessments are happening, but how can we do this in a way that's humane, but that also allows us to keep track of whether there is a disconnect in terms of their learning? The other thing that was really interesting, and so they actually talked about a specific plan for every student. And that's an interesting question. I'm not an educator. I don't know how that would look, but I think it's a discussion that should happen. The other thing that I think that I understood from our comments here is family engagement is really crucial to the success of this plan. And so how are we addressing that in our Chapter 6? Like, are we keeping track of, for example, there was a discussion about when students go through these assessments, that the family is informed about how their student is doing so that they understand that they're progressing or not progressing. And so really having a very close relationship between the students and the family and the people involved in their progression. And then a bigger question I have is when I looked at how outcomes are going to be assessed, I heard the word learning walks, I heard PLCs, and I would love to have some background from the people who are involved in our EML teaching programs at every site. What is the most useful in terms of feedback? Are the learning walks, are they efficient? Do they actually give feedback that is useful? Because it is time spent. A lot of people spend time to go to school to do the learning walks. Is that giving us the type of data that's useful? I would also think, or I'd like to ask is, we've talked about in our budget reductions how we are trying to shift a lot of the work to the site and saying, giving the capacity to our teachers to improve the outcomes of our students, less at the district level, more at the site level, which is great. But there does need to be a connection between the district and the site. And I would like to know, how are site leaders going to the district? How much time are they spending with the EML PLCs and the instructors to get ongoing feedback? What's working, what's not working, what support do we need? Like, I would really like to hear about that, that there is an interaction where, the time spent by the district leaders at the sites is useful and it results in productive feedback. And it is the type of interactions that the instructors benefit from. Does that make sense? So a lot more detail on how this process is going to happen. Just saying the word learning walk, I don't know. I mean, and I'd like to elicit that feedback from our EML leads at the schools before we settle on Chapter 6 and have some very clear description of how we're going to assess these programs.
So one thing I can share with you is if you look at Chapter 3, it's all about monitoring the child. Chapter 6 would be evaluating the program. Those are two different points of evaluation. I think what you're describing is a lot of how do we track the child? How do we monitor the child? That would live in Chapter 3, and I'd be happy to look at it again and see where we can add more clarity.
I think it's a little bit of both, right? Because Chapter 3 is going to inform Chapter 6, right? Because if we're monitoring the child and deciding on interventions and how we're going to approach that, that's really going to speak to outcomes, right? And that's Chapter 6. So having more information, not that we're going to monitor, how are we going to do it?
Okay.
Ms. Caffrey.
So I would just like to understand, echoing one of the public comments, how, and also Dr. Beal, just how we track individual student progress. So I think our MTSS TOSAs have been doing that up to this point. How are we going to be tracking student progress going forward without that role, so we still understand how students are doing and progressing?
So every site has, for instance, secondary, they have a team, an assistant principal that oversees everything EML related with support of the principal, obviously, and they have an EML teacher. They compile a team with the teacher of record or whoever comprises that team. And in elementary, oftentimes it's the principal. And if they have an assistant principal, then they support in that process. But the tracking of the journey of the child leading up to reclassification, we actually have a dashboard. It's called Elevation. And that all of the data that we need in order to identify who is ready to reclassify gets populated. So the dashboard tells us that. It's not an individual person. It's really training the staff to be able to use that. And that has been under development. We had a previous process prior to that. And then next year will be the full launch of using that platform. So we have trained the essential people. And it's a matter of how the principals establish their teams so that we can train the appropriate people.
That's very helpful. Thank you. To, I guess, expand also on Dr. Beal's point, when you launch the dashboard, will families in their parent-teacher conferences look at the dashboard together, or how will families have a good sense of how their child is doing and what support they're getting?
So there is a report that is called a cumulative report, and that actually prints out the history of the child. So even though the families have the annual results of the LPAC, for instance, that report will give them the entire history of the child. And there are notifications that we're building to strengthen so that they are aware of where their child is when it comes to that. Or if they have been reclassified, then there's a different notification for that. So we are working on strengthening those systems.
So will that be included in the description of the meta plan? What specific interventions, what the interactions with parents will be? What is the engagement going to be? Because this is a plan that is moving forward, right? This is how we're going to do it. So I feel that I want very specific things included that tells us how we're going to communicate, how we're going to track. Is that Elevation platform mentioned in the plan right now?
It's mentioned in Chapter 3.
Okay. And how it's going to be shared with families? Is it going to be shared with families?
The dashboard itself is for the educators, but the reports do go to families.
And so will the reports go during parent-teacher conferences that happen 2 to 3 times a year? How is this information?
Those details can be established.
Right. And so I that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I would like to see, because I'd like to have a system. I love the idea that we're going to have a system across all of our schools, but I'd like to know how that system is going to interact with our students and their families.
Ms. Caffrey.
In my board questions, one question I asked was for information about how our emerging multilingual students are doing at each of our schools. And I saw, for instance, that at Franklin, 72% of our students are making progress, and they increased by 26.3%, which to me looks huge, like a huge accomplishment. And I'm wondering, in developing the master plan, did you talk to principals about what's working and integrate that into the plan? Because it looks like our schools are at different stages in implementation. Yes.
So every school has obviously a different growth trajectory, if you will. And a lot of what they have shared has been anecdotal, and it hasn't been, I haven't formalized that into incorporating that to the chapter because it's been anecdotal.
Basically, I'm just wondering, I only see this point in time data, but are we seeing this kind of performance over time? And if so, can we take what is working at some of our schools and expand it? Is that kind of a piece of the thinking in the master plan?
Yeah, well, the solid implementation of DELD is something that we're working on to ensure that all sites do that with fidelity. And that is one big goal for next year, that it's not an inconsistent practice, that it's more solidified. So that's one piece that some of the schools that are having great success do have that system, and it's not interrupted. So that's just one example. There are others like incorporating IELD strategies within content areas. That's another area that we are continuously training our teachers so that they feel prepared or more supportive in that methodology.
Mr. Benny?
Just a couple of things. I realize that, first of all, I want to acknowledge Trustee Beal and Caffrey asking questions. I'd like to hear more about history and education. Many of these things sort of are just in you, and so I really do appreciate hearing those type of things. Is what you're calling an ELD authorization, is that equivalent of the same thing that we used to call the CLAD, or is the CLAD still exist? Is it? Okay. So in my experience, just so in partial response to your questions, the BCLAD is indeed what you said, that bilingual programming. You can't get a teaching credential in California without having the California Language Acquisition and Development authorization, what's called the CLAD. So this is a part of instruction for teachers and competency that they have to demonstrate if they're not bilingual. So that was just one thing. Another question. In terms of expectation of growth, you talked about the 2H and the 2L, so that in that second year it's divided in two. So that implies to me that we don't expect that development of language skills follows a 1 year, 1 grade level trajectory so that it just goes up the same. At a certain point, much like we talk about the transition between 3rd grade and 4th grade being learning to read or reading to learn, there are developmental stages in terms of language acquisition that are similar that cause some sort of flattening out at some point in the process. Is that right?
That is true.
Okay.
So there are 4 levels in the LPAC, so it wouldn't be appropriate to expect them to go to level 1 to 4 in 4 years.
Right.
It takes about 5 to 7 years for the average student to gain proficiency in a second language.
Okay. So my first question was really more of a statement saying thank you for asking questions when there are things that I've been steeped in for my entire career that kind of go, oh yeah, people might need to know that. So I appreciate it. I have comment later when you're ready to.
Yeah.
I do want to add one more thing with regards to your question on the schools that are doing well. What this plan will also bring is this dedicated English language development time. 30 minutes daily required for students who are EMLs is now going to be in this plan. So when we look at the elementary schedules, in addition to all the minutes for reading and math and all the other subjects, these students will need an additional 30 minutes of designated English language development. And that's always been proven as a really good practice when you have the authorized teachers who have the proper training and the curriculum in place. As some of the best practices, Sunita, I know you and I have the same best friend, ChatGPT. But to Mr. Vanny's point, that designated ELD protected time in the schools that I have seen be successful in my career, some of them even made it like the first thing in the morning. Everybody does it across the board so that we know it gets done and doesn't get like, oh, we're running late or lunch was delayed, whatever it is, and then it gets dropped off this calendar. I know Mr. Vanny knows what I'm talking about. But I think that's another really important part of what we're talking about today as we think about those, limited instructional minutes daily in a school day especially for our elementary students.
Thank you. Dr. Bill.
Actually, that reminded me of another question. I did read about the minimum of 30 minutes, and it actually said even more for older children, who probably the attention span, right? I did that question about the kindergarten test. That was confusing to me. Can you clarify that for me?
Yes. So the one of the criteria is in our district would be meeting basic skills. Well, that's California guidance, and our local assessment is STAR. When we decided on the cutoff score, it has to be a normed score. It has to be within the threshold that's considered basic. So that is defined by Renaissance, which is the provider that we use. So the number or the level of the threshold for kindergartners is in the same 25th percentile as first grade, second grade, and so on. But the number's going to look different because they're kinder first and so on. So it's not higher or lower. It's the 25th percentile threshold. That would be considered basic skills.
So is the issue that students are actually proficient and they're being called not proficient? I'm just confused about that kindergarten issue.
I think when you think of developmentally in kindergarten, it's also in some districts not even recommended to reclassify in kindergarten because it is early. It could be, as the skills progress, then the needs of language can surface at a different level. But for the purpose of the threshold that's been established, it is within the 25th percentile for all grade levels, but the number's going to look different for every grade level. So it's considered basic skills, not necessarily grade levels, basic skills.
Any other questions? So on one of your slides, you were talking about the alternative summative LPAC results. And if I heard you correctly, the difference in the scores were based on how the test was given, the proficiency of the way that the test was given. And at the last board meeting or two board meetings, I forget, we've had so many, we did the SIPSAs. And one of the things that we were looking at is the LPAC results data. And a couple of the schools had similar trends downward from one year to the next, and it looked almost identical. Now, it wasn't all schools, but it started a conversation. And one of the theories that was thrown out there, not by anyone in the room, but by someone else when they were having the same discussion at their school site, was there used to be district administration of the test, and now it was school site. And so perhaps that was their first go around at the school site. So I'm wondering what sort of supports are in place to make sure that the test is given with fidelity so that it doesn't impact the test scores, thus giving us kind of like a misrepresentation of where the student is at.
So I'm going to share two responses. First, the Alt LPAC is only given to a small group of students who qualify for that who have an IEP. So just to clarify, it's not all kids that have an IEP.
Correct. I was just using that as an example because I'm sure that even with the LPAC, for all of our EMLs, the way that the test is given really matters and can impact the results that you get out. Yeah.
Yes. So the test examiners are identified. They're either curriculum specialists or bilingual paraprofessionals. They have to be part of this uniform training. We have one designated trainer in our district that goes to the county and gets the trainer of trainers. She's done it for years and years and years and trains the same, has to use the same modality of training followed by the guidance that's been stipulated by the state of California. And they have to actually take a test and pass it. It's a very rigorous process. It's 2 to 3 days of training depending on the candidate or on the test examiner. So all of our test examiners are certified in the same way. And that limits discrepancies in how it's delivered. We used to have a unit prior to my arrival where it was just a district office personnel or managed by a district office, and they would go through the same rigorous training. So the training has not changed its integrity. It's now the personnel that works at a school site. It's really just a different individual, but the process of training them has not changed.
So I guess my follow-up is the training could be the same, but how are we following up or building on that to make sure that the test is being given at the highest level of fidelity? Because I could pass a test and still issue the LPAC differently than Mr. Banning, differently than Miss Munoz.
So as part of our structure, we have an LPAC coordinator in every site, and that is an administrator that's also trained. So they oversee all of the assessment at their site, and they're very much trained in the same way. So they're supporting their test examiners to ensure that it's delivered using the same manual, the same conditions. If it requires a small group assessment, they're aware of those accommodations. So all of that is coordinated by the LPAC coordinator. That is 99% of the times an administrator.
But there is a statistical measurement or phrase that is inter-rater reliability. It has to do with this very issue of when you're giving a test that someone is giving to someone else, are you getting reliable results? And reliable in statistics means you get the same results in different places. This is a huge challenge for standardized testing in general, whether kids are sitting taking tests with a booklet or whether they're trying to do it on an iPad or someone else is giving it to them. It's one of the reasons that it's not the same as saying that's blue, this weighs 3 ounces. In measuring academic performance, there are always shades of gray that have to do with some of the complexity of dealing with humans instead of widgets.
Agreed. I think the reason why I'm highlighting this is because of the importance and the impact that not getting reclassified, if they're at that level and they don't get reclassified, it affects their schedules, it affects what education looks like for them later. Dr. Beal.
That actually leads to a question. If somebody takes the LPAC test and they don't reclassify, and there is the idea, especially at the elementary school levels where the teachers may know the students very, very well, that there is a poor test taking condition, what recourse does the student have to not have to wait another year?
For the purpose of LPAC, the guidance is very strict, and it can only be the LPAC. So
they have to wait another year to retest. There's no recourse.
I mean, I think if you're talking about an extreme situation where, a fire alarm was called and water fell over the device or some really extenuating circumstance, then we would appeal to the state for a second administration. But if they missed it because of some other reason or just missed it by 1 or 2 points, there really is no appeal process. Maybe I'm not understanding your question, but
no, you are understanding it. I mean, is there a range of scores that pass, or it's just like you pass or you don't?
There is a specific threshold per grade level.
But one of those circumstances or conditions couldn't be the administrator, the educator, sees that the student is dysregulated and not in a state to take the LPAC. That couldn't be one condition in which we...
We have had schools and staff, we've talked to them a lot about preparing students well before the LPAC. I think you've mentioned this in past meetings where we want to, just like with the state test, we want to really create the conditions for everyone to be in a good place, quiet spaces. Everybody knows students are testing here, checking in with them, having water, whatever they need. So giving them practice tests, questions, because we do have the ability to do those, having them know how to use the device with their iPads, things like that, so that we kind of set the conditions for them to be able to take the test. And I believe we've been guiding staffs to do that.
They do what we call LPAC chats,
Yep.
where they review the scores. Especially as the kids get older, the teachers are really good at making them very aware of what it means to where their score is and how many points they missed it prior, or so forth.
Thank you.
Complex stuff.
Very complex stuff. Any other questions? Any comments? Mr. Benny?
First of all, before some broader comments about the plan, I spent some time with it. I do want to acknowledge that we know from both the data and experience that progress for EMLs isn't the same at every school. Some sites are showing strong growth while others are still working toward that goal. It doesn't take away from the dedication of our staff. It just reminds us that improvement is both ongoing and uneven, and that real progress has to happen both district-wide and at the site level. This plan recognizes that and gives a strong foundation for more consistent, equitable support across the system. I know we've been hearing some questions about how to even make that stronger today. With that said, I want to express deep appreciation for the comprehensive and thoughtful work reflected in this master plan. It's clear that the plan took an enormous amount of time, expertise, and coordination. It weaves together local insight, family engagement, school-level realities, and complex shifting legal expectations. It also builds on an arc of almost 60 years of effort going back to the Congressional Bilingual Education Act of 1968. Since then, educators, many right here in Santa Barbara Unified, have worked hard to ensure that English learners receive instruction that's research-based, well-supported, and evaluated for results. As we've seen progress, we've seen progress. We're in a district where more than 60% of our students are Hispanic or Latino, and fewer than 13% are currently designated as EMLs. That's not because the need has diminished over time. It's because decades of improvement in our programs and partnerships and throughout the state have happened. It also reflects the natural cycle of students gaining proficiency and being reclassified, and the fact that more and more students may be entering school already equipped with stronger English skills, perhaps because family members now have preceded them for those 60 years and benefited from the same system of support and commitment to progress and learning and improvement. That's something that's worth recognizing and continuing to build on. Finally, I want to note that this plan is a product shaped by the knowledge, experiences, and aspirations of our teachers, leaders, administrators, and support staff and families, students, and community. And most importantly, our community and our families and the kids. Our role as board members is to ensure that this plan is approved, implemented, and supported, and to express our deep gratitude to the leadership and expertise of the people who have made it happen. Thank you to everyone involved. Your work matters, and it will continue to make a difference for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. Any other? That's a really tough comment to follow. So can I just say ditto and just express my extreme gratitude to everyone who's been involved, and it is something that is really important to this board, I can tell you that. And thank you to Dr. Martinez. Thank you to the committee. Thank you to the parents that were involved. I know it's time out of your life and away from your family, and it's not lost on us. So thank you so much. Thank you.
May I recognize the principals in the back too, Mr. Dupont and Ms. Ochoa. Thank you.
So with that, that is our final item for today. We have coming events. Folks, please check what is the calendar called? The VIP events calendar. And we will call this meeting adjourned at 9:10 p.m. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.